Government launches political reform publicity blitz. Deadly earthquake rocks Nepal. And remembering the Battle of Gallipoli, 100 years on.
Good evening. At least 479 people have been killed when a powerful earthquake struck Nepal today. The tremor was felt in many neighboring countries, including China. 449 people are confirmed dead in Nepal alone, including 181 in the capital, Kathmandu. At least 2 Chinese nationals are among the dead. Many homes and buildings were destroyed, including centuries-old temples and towers.
The magnitude 7.8 quake struck 80 kilometers east of Pokhara. People have been warned to stay outdoors because strong aftershocks continue to rock the region. In the aftermath, several buildings collapsed in the center of the capital, the ancient old Kathmandu. Among them was the Dharahara Tower. It's one of Kathmandu's landmarks, built by Nepal's royal rulers in the 1800s and a UNESCO-recognized historical monument. It was reduced to rubble, and there are reports dozens of people are trapped underneath. At the main hospital in Kathmandu, people with broken bones and various injuries are being rushed in for treatment. Local news stations say the hospitals are inundated with the wounded as bodies are being piled up outside. Because the city is home to ancient wooden Hindu temples, many of those structures were reduced to rubble, and the search for survivors is underway. And a mountaineer confirmed the quake triggered an avalanche on Mount Everest. Romanian climber Alex Gavin said he had to run for his life in order to survive. He asked for prayers because many people were on the mountain when the avalanche hit. Tremors were being felt as far away as New Delhi and other northern cities in India, with some lasting as much as 1 minute. Police say phone lines are jammed with emergency calls. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi convened a high-level meeting with top officials to assess the situation and appeal for humanitarian aid. Today's quake had a depth of 11 kilometers, which is considered shallow in geological terms. The shallower the quake, the more destructive power it carries.
Here in Hong Kong, government officials today hopped on a bus to promote their political reform proposal. But as Joao de Silva reports, the publicity blitz brought to the forefront the divisiveness of the issue as supporters and opponents of the package followed the motorcade around town.
They waved and smiled as the bus passed by. Meantime, at street level, scuffles erupted between those who support and oppose the reform package. The government's bus parade to promote its political reform proposal made its way around town today, and it was a study in contrast. On Forbes Street in Kennedy Town, there were protests and counter-protests awaiting the motorcade. That's despite no details of the promotional campaign being released until just hours before it started. In the chaos that ensued, a number of protesters were seen being taken away by police officers.
That's really ridiculous. The government's car is just passed so fast, and we don't even see what is the government staff on the car.
From Kennedy Town, the bus carrying members of the government's reform task force and other officials made its way to Lok Fu in Kowloon. There, protesters threw ghost money at the parade and shredded copies of the government's reform blueprint. Some tried to chase after the bus but were promptly stopped by police officers. A warmer welcome was in store for the officials in Tai Po, where groups in support of the government's package appeared to be in the majority. They waved the national and SAR flags and chanted the government's promotional slogan, 2017, make it happen. But after the bus left, police were forced to intervene as scuffles once again erupted. On the government's second attempt at reaching out to the community, protests such as this one are not only promising to disrupt any further efforts to promote its political reform package, but also show how divisive the issue remains after the blueprint was unveiled. Sonya Silva, TVB News.
Carrie Lam also reiterated today that the government's political reform package will give voters a genuine choice in the chief executive election. And the chief secretary for administration suggested that voters could still make their voices heard even if they are not happy with the field of candidates. Owen Fung has that story.
Pan-Democrats say the government's political reform package fails to give voters a genuine choice in the chief executive election. They believe the nominating committee will only endorse candidates who are favoured by Beijing. Chief Secretary for Administration Carrie Lam said that's not the case.
Through the various design in the details of the arrangements to conduct these elections, eligible voters in Hong Kong will have a genuine choice in picking the next chief executive.
But what if voters find all the CE candidates to be unsatisfactory? Lam says people can use their votes to express their discontent. And if there's a larger number of votes that fail to endorse any candidate, she believes that whoever becomes CE will need to respond to this kind of political pressure. But Civic Party lawmaker Alan Leung doesn't believe the central government will be swayed by the pressure stemming from blank votes. If they want Leung Chun-ying to win, and if he gets 500,000 votes and there are 2 million blank votes, he'll still become CE again, Leung said. The chief executive says the CE election process can be enhanced in the future according to the basic law once the current reform package is implemented. He also warns that if the city doesn't implement reform this time round, it will miss the boat and there's no indication when the boat will arrive again. Leung said that will delay universal suffrage in LegCo elections too. Owen Fung, TVB News.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will leave for the United States tomorrow for a key visit. Security cooperation between the two countries and regional tensions are among the issues expected to dominate his landmark trip. Abe will meet with U.S. President Barack Obama at the White House, and he'll address a joint meeting of Congress, the first Japanese leader to do so. History will also be following him. In an unusual step, 25 members of the House of Representatives have sent a letter to Japan's ambassador to the U.S. urging Abe to address sensitive issues of history in his speech. Since the 1990s, Japanese governments have apologized for wartime aggression and treatment of so-called comfort women. Abe says his government upholds those apologies and has spoken of his heartfelt sympathy for the comfort women. But he appears reluctant to repeat another apology himself in the year when the world marks the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. Police in Japan say they have arrested a man who admitted to landing a drone with traces of radiation onto the roof of the Prime Minister's office. The stunt earlier this week was in protest of Tokyo's nuclear energy policy. Police say 40-year-old Yasuo Yamamoto turned himself in yesterday. He claimed he's angry that Shinzo Abe's government wants to restart all nuclear reactors as soon as possible. Japan's 48 reactors are currently offline following the 2011 tsunami-triggered Fukushima disaster. Police say the drone contained radioactive cesium, but the amount was too low to harm humans. No one was injured in the incident. The suspect faces charges of flying the drone and obstructing government duties.
Police in Italy have arrested 18 people suspected of belonging to an armed group linked to al-Qaeda. Some of the suspects, who are Pakistanis and Afghanis, were arrested in the early morning raids across Italy yesterday. Police say they were plotting attacks in their native countries. But they also say they have indications of a plot to attack the Vatican in 2010 that was never carried out. Two of those arrested were purported to be former bodyguards of Osama bin Laden.
Thousands of people from Australia, New Zealand and Turkey gathered on the shores of Gallipoli, Turkey this morning to commemorate the 100th anniversary of one of the bloodiest battles of World War I. The ill-fated British-led campaign, made up of mainly Australian and New Zealand troops, is marked as a coming of age for both nations. Alan Booknia reports.
Britain's Prince Charles was the first to lay a wreath at the ceremony commemorating the first day of the bloody campaign, called Anzac Day, after the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps. Gallipoli was the first time soldiers from the two countries fought under their own flags against troops from the Ottoman Empire. 44,000 Allied troops died during the fruitless 8-month campaign, 87,000 from the Ottoman side. It's in the national consciousness as the point where their nations came of age, emerging from the shadow of the British Empire.
They lived with death and dined with disease because that was where their duty lay. In volunteering to serve, they became more than soldiers. They became the founding heroes of modern Australia.
Their bravery and unity would help to forge the Anzac bond and reputation that endures to this day. I salute that, as I do the bravery of the troops who opposed them and all that have fought on this peninsula.
Anzac Day was also marked in Thailand, at the site of the so-called Death Railway of World War II. The Japanese Army forced Allied, mostly Australian and New Zealand, prisoners to work round the clock to build the 415-kilometre link to Burma. Tens of thousands of Allied prisoners and Asian labourers died as a result of the brutality and neglect of their captors. Their suffering passed into the Anzac legend.
In their most dire peril, they drew on the values of Anzac.
92-year-old Neil McPherson is a former prisoner of war who worked on the line, but he says he harbors no bitterness.
I have two grandchildren that are half Japanese and half Australian, so I think that would answer the question.
Alan Booknia, TVB News.
And still ahead in our newscast, more problems facing ATV. A rare glimpse into the life in North Korea. And the Wizards on the verge of advancing in the playoffs.
I have successfully privatized world peace.
A superiority complex. Childhood issues.
Sonya, how do you go to the bathroom in a suit? Just like that.
And the substance abuse problem.
You had this in your body?
Tonight, Iron Man 2 on Pearl's Weekend Blockbuster. And play TVB Fun for this awesome collectible figure.
I was born in 1990 and have grown up with the Basic Law. Over the past 25 years, I learnt about one country, two systems, and gained a better understanding of mainland Hong Kong relations. I witnessed our return to the motherland and the successful implementation of the Basic Law, which provides us with unique strengths. With the Basic Law, I believe Hong Kong will continue to be prosperous and stable, forging ahead towards a brighter future.
Why won't the central government allow true democracy in Hong Kong? Michael Chugani talks to Chief Secretary Carrie Lam on Straight Talk, Tuesday night at 9 on Pearl. The time now is 7:44. The time check was brought to you by Seiko.
Welcome back. Troubled broadcaster ATV is facing more problems. It's been accused of failing to contribute to